When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're traveling seems on upward hill, when the funds are low and the debts are high and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when your care is pressing and you're down a bit, rest if you must, but don't ever quit. Life is strange with all of its twists and turns, as one of us sometimes learns, and many a failure turns about when he might have won if he stuck it out. But don't give up, though the pace seems slow. You may succeed with another blow. Success is failure turned inside out, a silver lining of clouds of doubt. You never can tell how close you are. It may be near, or may be so far. So stick to the fight when you're the hardest hit. It's when things seem worse that you must not quit. At times we may feel alarmed and discouraged about what's going on in our lives and those things around us. We may want to quit. We may want to throw in the towel. We might want to say, you know what, I'm done. We might be alarmed by the inflation rate, and we want to say, you know what, I don't even care. I'm just not going to even worry about trying to spend my money wisely. You might want to quit that. We are alarmed at politics, so we might want to quit voting. We might be alarmed at the state of the church, and we may want to quit worship. We may be alarmed at what is now and what the future might hold, and we might be tempted to quit, might be tempted to give up, might be tempted to say, I'm done. You know, people have been alarmed over the centuries, and the time that Daniel was alarmed, we're going to be looking at that today. Now, last week we were looking at the end of Belshazzar's kingdom and his rule, and we're sort of going to go backwards. This is like a flashback. You know, I've seen a movie where they have flashbacks and they go back a little bit. Well, that's what's happening here, and we're going to go back just a little bit in Belshazzar's reign. As a matter of fact, we're going to go to his first year of his reign. And we're going to start with verse 1 of chapter 7, if you want to turn there with me. It says, in the first year of Belshazzar, as king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and a vision of his head as he was laying in his bed, and he wrote down the dream and told the sum of the matter. And so he's here and he's writing this down. He's starting to look at this dream. And so Daniel declares in verse 2, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up a great sea. And so these four winds, that means basically the four winds is the north, south, east, and west. And everything is being covered. Everything is being infiltrated here with this. And it says, and four great beasts came up out of the sea, different from one another. Now, when there's a sea and there's beast, it's telling us a couple things. The sea was seen as a dangerous place. The sea was seen as a place of chaos from the Jewish mind. And to have the beast of the sea was a picture of really governments. Remember in Revelation, it talks about the beast of the sea. Well, that's the governments. The beasts of the earth was those who wanted you to worship the beast of the sea, or the governments. And so that's what's going on here. And so sometimes when governments come into play, sometimes they're chaotic and they're dangerous and things don't seem to be going. But one of the things that we have to remind ourselves is just like the sea is never outside of God's reign and rule, neither is the government outside of God's reign and rule. So we need to have peace about that, right? Verse 4, it says, in the first line, and so this is the first piece, the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. And then as I looked, its wings were plucked off. And it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. And the mind of a man was given to it. And behold, another beast, the second one was like a bear. And it was raised up on its one side. It had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and it was told, arise, devour much flesh. And after this I looked, and behold, there was another leopard, like a leopard, had 4 wings of a bird on its back, and the beast had 4 heads, and a dominion was given to it. So there's these beasts, and they're scary, right? And it continues on, and after this I saw in the night's vision, behold, a 4th beast comes in. And terrifying, dreadful, exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth, and it devoured broken pieces and stamped what was left of it with its feet. And it was different from all the beasts before it. And it had 10 horns, and I considered the horns, and behold, there came up from them another horn, a little one, before which the three of the first horns were plucked by its roots. And behold, in the horns were the eyes like the eyes of men, and the mouth speaking great things. So Daniel sees this, and he's alarmed. He sees this great sea. He sees the powerful winds, and he sees these beasts. Now, you got the first beast. The first beast has like a lion and an eagle, right? And it shows the dominion and strength of that first beast. The second beast was a bear, and the bear, he has ribs hanging out of its mouth, and it's devouring flesh. And so it's a little bit tougher, a little bit stronger than the first beast. And the third beast comes along, it's a leopard. The leopard was one of the fiercest animals. It was given dominion rather than earning dominion. It was like given to it. And then there's this fourth beast, which is most terrifying and even more evil and more difficult to even understand than the rest. It's worse than the rest. It's different from the others. And so that's the situation. He's alarmed by this. Okay? Then in verse 9, Daniel looks and he sees something quite different. Look at verse 9. And as I looked, thrones were in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was as white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure gold. His throne was fiery flames, and its wheels were burning fire. The Ancient of Days, the one who's been here forever, the one with the white hair, pure, the one who's on his throne ruling, God Almighty. And then it says a stream of fire came out from before him, and thousands upon thousands served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court sat in judgment, and the books were opened. This Ancient of Days sat on his throne. He's there ruling and leading. Even though these beasts are coming, even though these beasts are there, even though all this chaos is going on, there's one who's on the throne. God is on his throne, and we can be comforted by that. The court is now in judgment. The courtroom, that's the picture here. It's the courtroom. There's judgment going to be made. There's a judgment that's going to be eked out. In verse 11, it says, and I looked. So this is the second time he looks. I look, and then because of the sound of the great words that the horn was speaking, remember that horn on that last beast was speaking? It's speaking words of blasphemy. And as I looked, the beast was killed, and its body destroyed and given over to be burned with fire. In the judgment, that horn continues to speak blasphemy, but that horn is judged by this one who's on the throne, this Ancient of Days. And then it goes, as for the rest of the beasts, these other three beasts, their dominion is taken away, but they were prolonged for a season and a time. That means it'll be short. There's a period of time where they will do their evil stuff, but it's not going to last forever. And then he sees something new, verse 13. And I saw in the night visions, behold, clouds of heaven. There came one like the Son of Man. And he came to the Ancient of Days, and he presented before him. So one who is like the Son of Man. The Son of Man was a favorite term that Jesus used to describe himself. Remember, those of you who've known the gospel and read the gospel, Jesus keeps on saying he was the Son of Man. The Son of Man does it. And we always think, well, we turn towards it looking at his human side. And yes, there is a human side, but you can see that there's a divine side there too, right? There's these human and divine brought together. Jesus is the Son of Man is in this glorious plot. Okay, it's glorious and wonderful, and he calls himself that. And then it says about the Son of Man, verse 14, and to him was given dominion. That means to Jesus, the Son of Man, dominion is given to him leadership, right? And the glory and the kingdom and all the peoples, nations, and language should serve him. In other words, it's a worldwide thing. That Jesus, as the Son of Man, is the leader of all, okay? He is the King of kings and the Lord of lords, okay? We need to see that, because if we're alarmed by the beast, we need to remember who is on the throne, and we got to remember that Jesus has dominion and that we should serve him. And his dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall never be destroyed. And that's the kingdom that Jesus brings into here. Okay, and as we're looking at this, now Daniel, when Daniel writes this, he doesn't know anything about the Great Commission, does he? And yet Jesus will say at the very last thing before he goes up to heaven is, all authority and power have been given to me, right? Therefore go and preach the gospel, right? Right, preach the gospel. Baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you, and lo, I'm with you always to the very end of the age. And so here, Daniel is going up to what Jesus is going to do later. Now, Daniel still needs an interpretation. He doesn't know exactly what's going on in these visions and dreams. And usually when when there's a vision and dream so far, who's the one who interprets it? Who does God give it to? Usually gives it to Daniel. But now, Daniel doesn't have it. He needs someone else to give him the vision. God usually gives it to him, but here he needs it. Verse 15. As for me, Daniel, my spirit within me was anxious. Are you anxious today? Are you alarmed? Are you worried? Daniel was. And the visions of my head alarmed me. What he was able to see as he looked out and saw these dreams and these visions, it alarmed him. And I approached one of those who stood there and asked him the truth concerning all this. So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of the things. These 4 great beasts are 4 kings who shall rise out of the earth. Now, why do I say that these beasts are the governments? Because the one who's interpreting the dream says the beasts are kings, the governments, right? Okay, this isn't like just Jeff's fantasy world, okay? All right, okay, this is what the Bible says, all right? All right. And the beasts are these kings or these governments, and they cause pain to the people of God. But then in verse 18, look, it says, but there's always, isn't that great? Whenever things get tough and things get difficult, God brings a big but into the situation. B-U-T. He brings that into the situation. He says, but the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever. That's good news, isn't it? That you and I, who are the saints of the Most High God, if you're a follower of Jesus Christ, that you're a saint, that you'll receive a kingdom. You are a kingdom of priests. See, that's what you and I are as followers of Jesus Christ. We are kingdoms of priests, and that's what God has given us. Then Daniel wants to understand better the 4th beast. So he says, okay, here's what I need to understand. Verse 19. Then I desired to know the truth about the 4th beast, which was different from the rest, exceedingly terrifying, with its teeth of iron, claws of bronze, which devoured and broke into pieces, stamped from what was left of its feet. In verse 10, and about the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn that came up, and before the 3 of them fell, and the horn that had its eyes and a mouth that spoke to great things, and seemed greater than all its companions. And as I looked, this horn made war with the saints and prevailed over them. Uh-oh. This horn, this beast, is terrifying. Notice the beast seems to win, doesn't it? What it says there, right? The horn made war with the saints and prevailed over them. And that sounds like bad news. But, verse 22, until, that's another word for but, the Ancient of Days came and judgment was given for the saints of the Most High, and the time came when the saints possessed the kingdom. The saints are involved in judging the nations, and thus the saints shall possess the kingdom. Verse 23, and thus he said, as for the 4th beast, there shall be a 4th kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all the kingdoms, and it shall devour the whole earth and trample it down and break it to pieces. Oh my, this is terrible. This is, lions and tigers and bears, oh my. I mean, this is what we're thinking. All these bad things are happening. And then it says, as for the 10 horns out of the kingdom, 10 kings shall rise, and another shall rise from them, and it shall be different from the former ones, and it shall be put down 3 kings. And you got all these battles and these different kings coming. And he shall speak words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and shall think to change the times and the law, and she shall be given into the hands for a time and a times and a half a time. And so we have this 4th beast. What does this 4th beast do? It blasphemies first of all against God, doesn't it? There's that little horn there, and that little horn there is saying all these bad things about God, all these terrible things, and blaspheming God, saying that God isn't real. Hey, does that sound familiar? That there's kingdoms that do that blaspheme against God, that say things against our God and against Jesus. Doesn't that happen today? And long drawn out persecution, look, it wears them out. And so sometimes we think that the persecution should only last a little bit. And some people think that we're not going to experience the persecution, that God's going to just sort of pluck us out before it happens. I don't see that. I think we're going to experience the suffering. I think we're going to. It'd be nice if we were plucked out. I hope they're right about that, but I don't think they are. And then it says a new calendar. Look what it says there. New times. And to change the times in the law. There's a new calendar instead of having the religious festivals. Have you ever, does anyone here do like the Google calendar or the Apple calendar on your phone, and you have the holidays on it, and all these weird holidays come and show up? These things that you never heard about before. You know, they're just wondering. All these things, and then instead of Christmas, it's, what is it called? Well, we got Hanukkah, but there's also, instead of the schools calling it Christmas holiday, where it's called winter holiday, right? You know, it's called instead of the Good Friday break and the Easter Monday, it's spring break, because that's safe. It's just interesting, just saying. And not only that, they have new law, right? New morality. Things that used to be good are now bad. Things that used to be bad are now good. Things that were up, they're now down. Things that are down, they're now up. What was once good is now considered evil. What was once evil is considered good. And so that's some of the things that are happening. But again, verse 26, God brings another but into it. But the court shall sit in judgment, and his dominion shall be taken away. Whose dominion? The beast. To be consumed and destroyed to the end. Verse 27, the kingdom and dominion of greatness of the kingdoms under the heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. His kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion shall serve and obey him. The beast will be defeated. The kingdom and dominion shall be given to the saints. God will be obeyed. Look at verse 28. Here is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts are greatly alarmed, and my color changed, but I kept the matter in my heart. Daniel was alarmed about this government that would come in and it would blaspheme against God, that would persecute against God's people over a period of time, that their calendar would change and that the morality would change. God's people would feel that they were losing and that we would never win. Everything that was up is now down, and what is down is now up. And the reality is this, and this is something that we have to grasp. The reality is that God will not always deliver us in the way that we want him to deliver us. He will not always deliver us like he did Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He will not always deliver us from the lion's den like he did Daniel. And you can go throughout history and see where time and time again where God didn't deliver them in the here and now. Where Joan of Arc is burned at the stake, or Tyndale, or Wycliffe. And these men and women of faith who trusted God back in the time of Jesus, just after that, in the first and second century, that were fed to lions in the Colosseum, they weren't all delivered. Polycarp was not delivered. And I don't want to scare you, but we have to remind ourselves of that. He will not always deliver us in the way that we think he ought to deliver us. And God doesn't always answer the prayers the way we think he ought to deliver us. You know, I've talked to people this week, and some tragedies that people were experiencing. And they were upset with God because God didn't do what they thought God ought to have done. That God should have not allowed his wife to have an affair, and that God should have done something about that, or that God should have kept that child from dying, or that God ought to have done this or ought to have done that. And when God doesn't do it, what happens is that we want to quit, and we end up wanting to quit God, and God doesn't want to quit on you. He really doesn't. But our temptation is to quit on a God. But what happens if you do quit on God? What are you left with? If you quit on God, what do you got? I mean, so you go into atheism and you say, well, I don't believe in God anymore. Well, what does that do for you? Will that make the unjust things happen to become just for you? Will the things all of a sudden everything meet out regular and good for you? I don't think so. There will be no more justice. As a matter of fact, your injustice really isn't justice, it's just life. That no one will intervene for you, that no one will help you, that no one will break through for you. And the temptation, though, is to give up on God. And one of the reasons I admire Bill so much is because Bill has been through the storm. And those of you who have been around a while know the storm that he had been through when he first came here, losing his parents, losing his wife. That's a storm. A terrible storm. And others of you have been through storms. But Bill didn't quit on Jesus. And many of you haven't quit on Jesus. Don't quit on Jesus. Life can be hard. Life can be tough. Life is not easy. Without Jesus, it's impossible. It's impossible, in my opinion. So how do we not quit? What do we have to remember? Why not quit? First of all, there is to be a judgment. Whatever detail may mean in this story here, it is crystal clear that the world is not going to trample and smash and be brutal against us forever. The saints, even though may appear to be defeated, the kingdoms may prevail, guess what? God has the last word. He will bring judgment He will bring justice. He will balance it out. And if you don't believe in God, if you're an atheist and there's nothing after this, then justice is never taken care of. Judgment is never made. God never is able to sort it out because there is no God to sort it out. But if you believe in God and you hold on to that, God will bring about his justice. And we've got to trust in that. The gas chambers will end. The killing fields will end. The countless of other infamous ways of destroying people will end. There will be a judgment. The second thing is the Son of Man will come. The Son of Man, in all of his glory and beauty, Jesus will come back. And he will come back to take his throne on the earth. We will welcome him as the ruler and the king that he is. And he will rule, and he will mete it out. And it will be a powerful time. The beast of political power and power politics, however invincible it may seem today, they will not reign forever. Jesus will come and he will reign. The perfect human, the Son of Man, will come with all authority to finally take over the work of the beast. And he will win. And lastly, the saints will receive the kingdom. The word saint here means one who is set apart. I've ministered most of my ministry in Catholic areas. When they said saints, they thought of Saint Mary, Saint Joseph, Saint this, Saint that. You know, when I think of saint, I think of Saint Julie and Saint Susan and Saint Gary and Saint Jim. You know, Saint Susie. You know, that's what I think of. I think of you guys. I think of you saints. And that you will rule, that the kingdom will be yours, that you'll be set apart as a kingdom of priests. The true vision of the Son of Man himself is that the disciples, that they would eventually be judges, right? That's what he says to them. Matthew chapter 19, verse 28. Truly I say to you, in the new world, when the Son of Man will sit on his glorious throne, you who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes. Isn't that great? That the saints are given authority and given power. How is this possible? It is only possible because there's a resurrection. That's why it's possible. Because Jesus Christ died and buried and was rose again. That's why it's possible. That's why it's possible, because one day you will rise again. You will rise again, and the dead in Christ will rise first, and we who are alive and remain will be caught up together with them in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. And we will get to reign. Now, look, with the resurrection we have hope. And Daniel in chapter 12 will talk about that resurrection. We're going to hold that off till then. But how can he promise that the saints will judge after he told them that the beast will prevail? It's because of resurrection. The saints, the beast has no control. The government has no control over resurrection. He could, the government could pave our tombstones over with concrete 4 feet deep. Guess what? You're coming up through. Isn't that glorious? Isn't that wonderful? You're going to come up through. It don't matter. It doesn't matter. And see, all the answer isn't given. But look at what John writes in Revelation chapter 7, verse 9. He says, after this I looked, and behold, a great multitude that no one could number, from every nation and all the tribes and peoples and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes, palm branches in their hands. How is that possible? Only through the resurrection of the dead. And look what else John told us. These are the ones coming out of the great tribulation. And that's why I think that we're going to suffer some, because we're coming out of it, not being avoided of the tribulation. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore they are before the throne of God, and they serve him day and night in his temple. And he who sits on the throne will shelter them with his presence. They shall hunger no more, neither thirst anymore. The sun shall not strike them, nor any scorching heat. For the Lamb in the midst of the throne will be their God. Sorry. The Lamb in the midst of the thrones will shepherd them, and he will guide them to springs of living water, and God will wipe every tear from their eyes. Isn't it interesting? The wiping of tears. Who usually wipes your tears? You usually do, don't you? Because your eyes are sensitive. But it is the God of the universe who knows the sensitivity of your eyes and of your heart. He will wipe your tears away, and he will wipe my tears away. This wiping of tears away will bless us. So I want to encourage you, don't quit. And you may be tempted to quit. Maybe you've been tempted. Maybe you're tempted right now. I want to encourage you, don't quit. Hang in there. Praise the Lord. Worship him. Serve him.